Daniel had always dreamed of the stars. As a child, he would lie on the roof of his parents' house, staring up at the night sky, wondering if someone out there was staring back. Now, years later, his dream had come true. He was part of a cultural exchange program, the first mission where humans and aliens would live side by side, learning about each other's ways of life. The ship landed on a quiet alien settlement, far from the grand cities he had read about. This place was different. It felt almost like a small town on Earth, except the sky glowed with two suns and the trees shimmered with silver leaves. The people here looked both familiar and strange. They walked upright, their figures slender and graceful, their skin carrying soft patterns that glowed faintly when the sun set. Among them was a girl named Lyra. She was younger than most of the others who came to welcome the human delegation. While the elders stood with calm dignity, speaking in soft tones, Lyra stood further back as if she wasn't supposed to be there. She was quiet, her large bright eyes focused on the humans. Yet whenever Daniel's gaze met hers, she quickly looked away. Daniel noticed her, though he said nothing at first. She seemed shy, perhaps even afraid. But there was something about the way she lingered on the edges, curious but hesitant, that made him wonder what she was thinking. In the first few days, Daniel was busy helping his team adjust. They built shelters, shared supplies, and began learning the language of the aliens. He was good at listening, picking up the tones and rhythms quickly. That was when he saw her again. Lyra, carrying a heavy container of tools across the field. The box was almost as large as her, and she struggled with each step. Without thinking, Daniel rushed over to help. "Here, let me," he said, using both hands to lift the container with ease. Lyra froze, blinking at him as if she wasn't sure how to react. Then, slowly, she let go of one side and let him carry the weight. Her skin glowed faintly, the patterns shifting in color, and Daniel wondered if it meant embarrassment. "Thank you," she whispered in a soft, melodic voice. Her accent was heavy, but the words were clear enough. Daniel smiled. "No problem. Where should I put this?" She pointed toward a storage tent, and together they carried it inside. For a moment, silence stretched between them, awkward yet strangely comforting. Daniel wanted to say something, but he didn't know if asking questions would offend her. Finally, he tried the simplest approach. "I'm Daniel," he said, placing his hand on his chest the way their leader had shown. Lyra hesitated, then mimicked the gesture. Lyra. Her name lingered in the air, light and soft, and Daniel found himself repeating it quietly as if testing the sound. She gave a tiny smile, almost hidden, before lowering her gaze again. After that, he began noticing her more often. She wasn't like the others, who spoke in measured, formal tones. She stayed back, but her eyes followed everything. She seemed curious about the humans, their tools, their clothes, even their way of laughing, but she never joined the conversations. One evening, Daniel was sitting outside practicing alien words under his breath. He struggled with one phrase, stumbling over the sounds. From behind him came a small laugh. He turned, surprised, to see Lyra standing a few feet away. Her hand covered her mouth, her glowing patterns flickering brightly. "You say wrong," she said, her voice gentle. Then she spoke the word slowly, carefully. Daniel repeated it, and she nodded. "Better," he chuckled. "Thanks for the lesson." That was the start of something. Each evening, she would find him, correcting his mistakes, teaching him small words, sometimes laughing at how badly he mispronounced them. At first, their conversations were short and broken, but slowly she grew more comfortable, speaking longer sentences, asking questions about his world. She wanted to know what Earth was like. "Do you have 2 sons?" she asked one night. "Only one," Daniel answered. "But we have a moon that glows at night." Her eyes widened in wonder. "A moon? Like silver rock in sky?" "Yes," Daniel said, smiling at her amazement. "It shines in the dark." She leaned closer, her glowing skin reflecting the starlight. "I want to see." Daniel wished he could show her right then, but instead he described it. the way it rose slowly, the way it cast light over oceans and mountains. She listened without blinking, as if she could see it through his words. In return, she told him about her world. The silver trees, she said, carried memories. If you touched them, sometimes you felt the echo of someone who had touched it long ago. She explained how her people sang instead of writing, storing their history in long, endless songs that only the elders could remember. Daniel found it fascinating, the way her voice carried when she sang a short piece, soft and haunting. The days turned into weeks, the two of them grew closer, yet it was a closeness that existed in secret. The others, both human and alien, noticed their meetings but said nothing. Still, Daniel sensed that such friendships were rare, maybe even frowned upon. Lyra never came too near when others were around. She saved her words for the quiet moments when only the stars above seemed to be watching. Sometimes Daniel wondered why she kept her distance from her own people too. She seemed different, more curious, more willing to listen, less afraid of the unknown. He admired that about her. One evening, as the suns dipped below the horizon and the sky turned a deep shade of violet, Daniel realized something had changed. He was no longer just curious about her. He looked forward to their talks, to her laughter, to the way her eyes lit up when she spoke of things she loved. He found himself thinking about her even when she wasn't around, but he also knew there were boundaries. She was from another world, another way of life. What they shared was fragile, something that might break if pushed too far. So he kept his feelings quiet, telling himself that their friendship was enough. What he didn't know was that Lyra was fighting the same storm inside her. Every time she spoke to him, every time he smiled at her, her heart raced in ways she didn't understand. And though she tried to hide it, the glowing patterns on her skin betrayed her, flickering like fireflies in the dark. Their story was only beginning. The days passed slowly, yet for Daniel they felt like moments stolen from another life. Every sunrise on the alien world carried something new, strange sounds of birds with crystal-like wings, the shimmering silver leaves of the trees, and the twin suns that warmed the land in a golden glow. But more than all of this, it was the quiet meetings with Lyra that filled his days with anticipation. He didn't plan them, yet somehow they always happened. Sometimes it was in the open fields, when she pretended to collect herbs. Other times it was near the stream where she sat alone, dipping her hands into the cool water. Daniel would join her, and though at first their words were clumsy and simple, slowly their conversations grew longer, more meaningful. He learned that she was not like the others of her people. She preferred silence over the long songs her kin often sang. She liked exploring places outside the settlement, wandering into the glowing forests where others rarely went. She admitted she had always felt a little different, a little out of place, but when she spoke to him, she felt understood. Daniel, in turn, told her stories about Earth. He spoke of crowded cities with tall buildings that touched the sky. He described oceans so vast that they seemed endless, and forests with trees taller than any structure. Lyra would listen with wide eyes, her glowing patterns flickering in rhythm with her excitement. Sometimes she laughed at his descriptions, of things like dogs or bicycles, shaking her head as if he was making it up. One evening they sat near the stream as the sky turned to shades of violet and blue. Lyra leaned forward, drawing shapes in the sand with a stick. Daniel watched her, noticing how the light caught the edges of her hair, giving it a faint glow. "Why do you always sit alone here?" he asked gently. She stopped drawing for a moment. "Others do not see me the same. I am not strong, not good at singing, not good at rules." Daniel frowned. "But you're smart. You're kind. You notice things others don't. That seems important to me." Her eyes lifted to meet his, and for a brief moment, he saw a softness there, almost like gratitude. She looked away quickly, though, dipping her hand into the stream. "You say strange things," she murmured, but her voice carried a smile. Over time, they began to share small secrets. Daniel told her how he used to climb the roof at night back on Earth just to watch the stars. She confessed that she sometimes sneaked away from her duties to explore the hidden caves in the forest. These small truths wove a thread between them, pulling them closer. One night, Daniel tried teaching her a human song. He hummed softly, keeping it simple. Lyra listened, tilting her head. Then carefully she copied the tune, her voice soft but clear. It wasn't perfect, but it was beautiful in its own way. They both laughed when she mixed the words, turning them into something entirely new. Yet Daniel thought her version sounded even better. Still, there was an unspoken rule between them. When others were nearby, Lyra became quiet again, keeping her distance. She never walked too close, never let her glowing skin betray what she felt. Daniel understood without her saying it. What they had was fragile, something that needed to be protected from watchful eyes. One day a small storm rolled over the settlement. Rain fell like crystal beads, shimmering in the light of the suns. Most people stayed indoors, but Daniel saw Lyra outside, standing in the rain with her arms raised as if welcoming the sky. Her glowing patterns brightened against the drops of water, making her look almost otherworldly. Daniel stepped out, the cool rain soaking his clothes. "Aren't you going to get cold?" he called, laughing. She turned to him, smiling in a way she rarely did. "We do not get cold. Rain feels alive." He walked closer, tilting his face to the falling drops. She reached out, touching his hand lightly as if showing him something. The touch was brief, but it sent a warmth through him that the rain couldn't wash away. They stood like that for a while, sharing the storm in silence. And though no words were spoken, Daniel felt something shifting, something deeper growing between them. The next day, he couldn't stop thinking about it. He wondered if she felt the same way. He wondered if he should say something, anything, about the feelings that were beginning to bloom inside him. But each time he thought of speaking, he reminded himself of the risk. She was from another world, another culture. What if such feelings were forbidden? What if he scared her away? For Lyra, the struggle was no different. She had never felt this way before. Every time Daniel laughed, her heart seemed to race. Every time he looked at her, she felt warmth spread through her chest, yet she was terrified of what it meant. No one from her people had ever spoken of love toward a human. It was not only rare, it was unheard of. But despite the fear, she couldn't stay away. She found excuses to see him, whether to teach him, words to ask about Earth, or simply to sit beside him in silence. She told herself it was only friendship, that nothing more could ever happen. But deep down, she knew her heart was telling her otherwise. One evening, as the sun sank low and the stars began to appear, Daniel sat on a rock near the silver forest. He waited, not sure if she would come. But then he heard her soft footsteps behind him. She sat down without a word, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. For a while they just watched the sky together, the silence between them full of unspoken thoughts. Finally, Lyra whispered, "You will leave when mission ends?" Daniel nodded slowly. "Yes, in a few weeks." Her eyes lowered, and the patterns on her skin dimmed slightly. He noticed the change, the sadness in her voice. "Do you want me to leave?" he asked carefully. Her lips parted as if she wanted to answer, but no words came. Instead, she looked away, hiding her face. Daniel didn't push. He only said softly, "I'll miss this place. I'll miss our talks." Her fingers curled against her knees. She wanted to tell him that she would miss him too, more than anything. But the words stuck in her throat, too heavy to release. Instead, she only gave a small nod, her glowing patterns flickering faintly in the darkness. And in that moment, Daniel realized the truth. She cared for him, even if she couldn't say it aloud. And he cared for her, more than he had ever admitted to himself. Neither of them spoke the words that night, but both felt the same storm building inside. Their bond had already grown too strong to ignore. Their story was moving toward something neither of them could stop. The weeks passed more quickly than either of them wished. Daniel often tried not to think about the end of the mission, but each morning when he woke up, the reality came closer. The humans had almost completed their goals, sharing knowledge, trading supplies, and learning about the alien culture. Soon his team would return to Earth, leaving behind the friends they had made. And for Daniel, leaving would mean leaving Lyra. He thought about it often, usually when they sat together in silence under the glowing trees. She didn't ask again about his departure, but he knew she hadn't forgotten. Sometimes when their eyes met, he saw the same quiet sadness flicker across her face. She hid it quickly, but he noticed. He noticed everything about her now. One evening, there was a farewell gathering in the settlement. The aliens prepared food that shimmered like crystals, and the humans shared music through small speakers. Everyone gathered in the open square, laughing, singing, and exchanging gifts. Daniel joined the group, smiling politely, but his thoughts were elsewhere. He kept searching the crowd, hoping to see Lyra. At first, she wasn't there. He wondered if she had stayed away on purpose, too shy to face the large gathering. But then, just as the suns dipped below the horizon and the sky filled with stars, he saw her. She stood on the edge of the crowd, half hidden in the shadows, watching quietly, as she always did. When Daniel noticed her, his chest tightened with relief. He wanted to walk to her. But before he could move, something unexpected happened. The music played louder, and a group of young aliens laughed as they tried to mimic human dances. Daniel joined them for a moment, showing them simple steps, their laughter echoing in the night. Lyra stood frozen, watching from afar. She saw how easily he made everyone laugh, how others gathered around him, enjoying his presence. Something inside her stirred, a sharp, restless feeling she didn't understand. She thought of what would happen when he left. He would return to his world, to his people where he belonged. Maybe he would forget her. Maybe he would laugh and dance with others the way he did here. The thought made her chest ache, and before she could stop herself, her heart pushed her forward. The music quieted for a moment, replaced by the soft hum of alien voices, and in that silence her voice broke through. "I love you." The words escaped her lips louder than she intended. They hung in the air, clear and sharp, reaching every ear. For a moment, no one moved. The humans turned in surprise, their eyes wide. The aliens stared at her, their glowing patterns flickering in shock. Daniel froze. His breath caught in his throat as his mind repeated her words again and again. Had she really said it? Did she mean what he thought she meant? Lyra's face glowed brighter than he had ever seen, her patterns shifting rapidly in colors of deep red and gold. Realizing what she had just done, panic filled her. She had not planned it. She had not thought it through. The words had simply burst out of her, driven by feelings too strong to hold back any longer. Her hands shook as she covered her face, and without another word, she turned and ran. The crowd parted as she rushed past, her glowing skin leaving a trail of light in the dark. She fled across the field toward the landing area where her ship rested, her steps quick and uneven. Daniel stood rooted in place, still stunned. Around him, whispers spread through the crowd. Some humans looked confused. Some of the aliens looked disapproving, their patterns dimming in unease. But none of that mattered to him. His eyes stayed fixed on the direction she had gone. Slowly, his shock turned into something else, a fierce need not to let her think she had made a mistake. She had said the words he had been too afraid to speak. She had given voice to the feelings that had been growing between them since the first day they met, and now she was running as if it was something to be ashamed of. Without hesitation, Daniel pushed through the crowd and started after her. The path to the ships was dark, lit only by the faint glow of the silver trees and the stars above. EQ ran quickly, his boots crunching against the ground. Ahead of him, he saw the faint shimmer of her skin as she moved, still running, still trying to hide from what she had done. "Lyra," he called. His voice carried across the open field. But she didn't stop. She reached her ship and hurried up the ramp, her hands trembling as she pressed the door controls. Just before it could close, Daniel reached it and placed his hand on the frame. "Wait!" Lyra froze, her back to him. Her shoulders shook as If she was fighting back tears, though, he didn't know if her kind cried the same way humans did. I shouldn't have said it, she whispered, her voice breaking. I ruined everything. Daniel stepped inside the ship slowly, not wanting to frighten her. No, you didn't. You didn't ruin anything. She turned to face him, her glowing patterns flickering wildly in confusion and fear. You don't understand. My people will not accept this. They will say it is wrong, and your people will laugh at me. Daniel shook his head firmly. Lyra, listen to me. Do you think I would laugh at you? Do you think I would ever make you feel ashamed for telling the truth? She stared at him, uncertain, as if afraid to believe him. He took a step closer, lowering his voice. The truth is, I feel the same. I've felt it for a long time. I just didn't know if I was allowed to say it. But you, he smiled softly, you were braver than me. Her eyes widened, the glow on her skin softening into calmer, warmer tones. She searched his face, trying to find any sign that he was only being kind. But all she saw was honesty, and it made her heart race even faster. You love me too? She whispered. Daniel nodded. Yes, I do. For a moment, silence filled the small space, heavy with emotions neither of them had ever spoken aloud before. Then Lyra's lips curved into the smallest, shyest smile, and she lowered her head, her glow brightening again, not with shame this time, but with something new. Outside, the night continued on, the crowd in the square still buzzing with whispers. But inside the quiet of the ship, two hearts from different worlds had finally spoken the same truth. And though they didn't know what the future would bring, neither of them regretted the moment. The night after Lyra's confession felt heavier than any night before. Outside the ship, whispers spread quickly through the settlement. Some humans spoke with curiosity, some with quiet disapproval, and among the aliens, there were flickers of unease in their glowing patterns. To them, this was something unexpected, something that didn't fit within their rules. Inside the ship, however, the world felt different. Daniel sat near her, watching as she kept her gaze low, her hands folded tightly together. She was afraid, and he knew it. He could almost feel the storm inside her heart. Lyra, he said softly, breaking the silence. What you said, it didn't ruin anything. If anything, it gave me the courage I never had. Her eyes lifted slightly, her glow flickering with hesitation. But your people, and mine, they will not understand. Daniel leaned forward. Maybe they don't have to. Maybe it doesn't matter what they think. What matters is what you feel, and what I feel. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she whispered, I was so scared. I thought you would laugh, or walk away. Daniel smiled gently. I could never walk away from you. You've changed the way I see everything here. This place, these days. They wouldn't mean the same without you. Her glowing patterns softened, the colors calming like waves after a storm. She wanted to believe him, and part of her already did. Still, fear lingered. If we choose this path, she said, we must be ready. It will not be easy. I know, Daniel replied firmly. But I'm not afraid. Not if it's with you. The words struck her deeply. For the first time, she allowed herself to truly smile. Not the small, hidden smiles she used to give, but one that reached her eyes. Daniel's chest tightened at the sight. It was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. The next morning, the whispers had grown. When Daniel walked into the square, he could feel the stares. Some humans avoided his eyes, others offered curious looks. The aliens stood in small groups, their glowing skin dimmed as they spoke in hushed tones. Lyra walked at a distance, her head lowered as though she wanted to disappear. Daniel couldn't let it continue. He stepped into the center of the gathering, his voice strong. I heard what people are saying. You think it's wrong that she said what she felt? But is it wrong to be honest? Is it wrong to care for someone? The crowd shifted uneasily. An alien elder stepped forward, his glow steady but dim. Our ways are not your ways, human. Feelings such as these are not shared between our kind and yours. It brings imbalance. Daniel looked at him without fear. Maybe your ways need to grow. Maybe our worlds have more in common than you think. If we can share knowledge, if we can trade and live together, then why can't we also share something as simple, as natural as love? His words hung in the air. Some of the humans nodded quietly, surprised at his boldness. Some aliens murmured among themselves, uncertain. Lyra stood frozen at the edge, her heart pounding. She hadn't expected him to stand for her like this, not so openly, not in front of everyone. The elder's patterns flickered, showing disapproval, but he did not argue further. Instead, he turned away, leaving the space heavy with silence. Slowly, people drifted back to their tasks, though the whispers didn't vanish completely. When the square emptied, Daniel found Lyra still standing there, her eyes wide, her glow trembling with emotion. "You," she whispered, almost unable to speak. "You stood against them. For me." Daniel stepped closer. "I told you. I'm not afraid. Not when it comes to you." She lowered her gaze, her lips trembling as though she wanted to say something more, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she simply reached out, her hand brushing lightly against his. It was the first time she had touched him so openly, without fear of being seen. That small gesture was enough. It was a promise, silent but powerful. They would face whatever came, together. The days after Daniel's declaration felt different. The settlement was quieter around them. Some people kept their distance while others watched curiously, waiting to see what would happen. But Daniel and Lyra no longer hid. They still met, by the stream, still talked under the glowing trees, but now their bond was clearer, less fragile. At first, Lyra was nervous, expecting her people to forbid her from seeing him. Yet the elders stayed silent. Perhaps they didn't know what to do. Perhaps they hoped the feelings would fade on their own, but they didn't fade. They grew stronger. Daniel and Lyra spent more time together, no longer speaking only of small things. They talked about the future. "One day," Daniel said, "maybe humans and your people won't see this as strange. Maybe they'll see it as something good." Lyra tilted her head, her patterns glowing softly. "You believe hearts can change?" "Yes," Daniel said. "If people are brave enough to try." She fell quiet, but her smile told him she wanted to believe it too. One evening, the humans prepared for their return to Earth. The ships were checked, supplies loaded. The farewell ceremony was simple, quieter than before. Daniel stood with his team, but his thoughts were elsewhere. Every glance pulled him toward Lyra, who stood with her people watching silently. When the time came, Daniel stepped forward. His heart pounded, but he didn't care who was watching. He walked straight to Lyra. The crowd hushed, waiting. He stopped, in front of her, his voice low but clear. "I don't want to say goodbye, not like this." Her glowing patterns flickered nervously. "But you must leave. Your people are waiting." Daniel shook his head. "I'll leave, but I'll come back. I promise you, Lyra, this isn't the end. I'll find a way, no matter what it takes." For a long moment she only stared at him. Then slowly her lips curved into the smallest, most fragile smile. She lifted her hand and pressed it lightly against his chest, right where his heart beat. "Then I will wait, no matter how long." Around them, whispers stirred again, but neither cared. In that moment, the crowd didn't exist. Only the two of them did. When Daniel finally boarded his ship, his chest ached with both sadness and hope. He watched through the window as the settlement grew smaller, the silver trees shimmering under the twin suns. And among the crowd below, one figure stood glowing softly, her eyes fixed on the sky. Back on her planet, Lyra held on to his words. She no longer felt the same loneliness she once did. Her people might not understand yet, but she didn't hide anymore. She sang the songs of her world with new strength, her voice carrying the memory of his promise. And somewhere, across the stars, Daniel carried the same memory. Their story was not an ending. It was a beginning, a fragile but powerful thread of love stretching between two worlds, ready to grow into something greater than either had ever dreamed. Because sometimes, the smallest act of honesty, the courage to say "I love you," was enough to change not only two lives but the future of entire worlds.